Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the latest studio album from Smoulder entitled Violent Creed of Vengeance. This is the sophomore studio album from this classic, epic, heavy metal and doom metal crew hailing from my neck of the woods, Toronto, Ontario, also featuring Sarah Ann Vincent of Banger TV fame on lead vocals. They rose to prominence in the late 2010s with the Swordwoman demo in 2018 and their official debut album in 2019, Times of Obscene Evil and Wild Daring, which I, at the time, thoroughly enjoyed and appreciated. I remember Anna and myself actually including this on our top 10 albums of 2019 video list thingy-mabob. Really enjoyed the Dream Quest Ends EP that came out in early 2020 as well. Overall, I would say that Smoulder has been responsible for some of the best, vintage heavy metal and doom in recent memory, and this latest studio album, Violent Creed of Vengeance, is no exception to that rule whatsoever. In a lot of ways, this is a bigger and a more expansive record in comparison to previous Smoulder releases. The songs are a bit longer, there are some more progressions and some more unexpected twists and turns. The production, the mixing and mastering, while not quite clean per se, is certainly not as raw as something like the Swordwoman or even the debut. It has a bold, deep, full-bodied sound. It feels big and epic and larger than life. And there are a lot of little touches with, the way the vocals are mixed and with the way that, bass and rhythm guitar are mixed and with that kind of echoey, reverby vibe that kind of drapes over everything that, it really kind of nails that vintage 80s metal production, the kind of shit that, proto-power metal bands and doom metal bands and thrash and heavy metal bands had in the underground in the 80s. Simultaneously, this is also in some ways a very personal and provocative record, especially for the aforementioned Sarah Ann Vincent. You may not be able to tell from the high fantasy lyrical coat of paint, but a lot of what Sarah Ann is writing and singing about on this record is coming from personal experiences with COVID-19, misogyny, and rape culture. To be blunt and simple, it's been a rough couple of years, and Sarah Ann is putting all of that into this album, which in turn makes it feel all the more important and urgent and powerful, especially in this album's brightest moments when we reach its highest peaks. Opening number and title track Violent Creed of Vengeance appropriately kicks things off with some triumphant, epic, beefy, muscular, vintage metal riffery, some howling vocals, some dynamic twin guitar melodies and harmonies. It is a mighty, ferocious, and snarling blast for sure, a fantastic way to start off this record, and as is the case with a lot of what Smoulder has done in the past, I can't shake this image from my mind of a sword-wielding woman warrior atop a mountain with lightning striking the tip of her blade. Then there's the talisman and the blade, which ramps things up big time, fully sporting a classic power metal and speed metal underbelly. It's faster, it's louder, defined by soaring melodies and roaring licks and leads. Imagine really early Halloween, but with some of the more theatrical elements of Brocus Helm, and you're kind of in the right ballpark. Then there's Midnight in the Mirror World, which is a little bit moodier and a little bit more mournful. It still has, some thunderous, epic metal pounding, but there's also, I would say, some more gloom and sorrow being conveyed. It's a more dramatic number, especially with the vocal work. And I'm not just referring to Sarah's leads, I'm also referring to those really atmospheric chanting vocals in the background, the choral vocals. It definitely gives this a lot of depth and atmosphere, making this also probably one of the most immersive and cinematic cuts on the record. The album's closing number, Dragon Slayer's Doom, definitely leans the furthest into full-blown doom metal, with some movements and passages that would not be out of place on a classic Candlemass or Solitude Aeternus record. It also probably has the most bloat out of anything else on the album. Like, it probably doesn't need to be almost 10 minutes long. But it's hard for me to argue that anything should be cut when everything in this song is oh so good. Especially when we start getting to these multi-layered walls of, like, guitar noodling and melodicism. Sarah's isolated, howling vocals leading into the full-on epic metal climax, too, is honestly one of the best parts of this entire record. Tracks like Path of Witchery, Victims of Fate, and Spellforger are probably filled with some of the best, like, retro, vintage metal riffage I think I've heard in a while. They're fun, they're catchy, they kick ass. Victims of Fate especially feels like something that I actually could have heard on, like, a proto-power metal, kind of like epic metal record back in the mid to late 80s. Hell, there are even a few galloping riffs and melodies that weirdly bring to mind some of King Diamond's solo stuff. I don't know, I might be going crazy, but I can't help but not hear that. Something about it just feels like that. I'm just reminded of that. I don't know what to tell you. Something I forgot to mention, science fiction and fantasy writer Michael Moorcock delivers some narration in the beginning of Victims of Fate and gives it a lot of menace and gravitas and extra atmosphere. Very cool, very fun, very spooky. Look, the point is, this shit is great. Supremely well produced, performed, written, and executed. Feeling a very, 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 very enthusiastic 4 to 5, leaning towards a 4.5 to 5. Probably one of the best kind of like retro metal records I've heard so far this year. I really like the balance that Smoulder have struck between heavy metal and doom metal. I like that they're also going further into the realms of like speed metal and power metal. I love how confident they sound. Smoulder spent a lot of time writing this album, planning it out before Sarah and Sean ended up moving to Finland, and it shows. They took advantage of every moment of time that could possibly be spared to work on this album, and it shows consistently throughout. No doubt in my mind, if you liked Smoulder before, you're very likely to like this album as well. You might even love it. If you're looking for a blast of classic metal worship that still feels a little bit different from the stuff that you maybe grew up listening to, you know, it's not identical, this'll fit the bill quite nicely. Once again, very strong 4 to 5, leaning towards a 4.5 to 5. I think it's fucking great. Like, this'll be in on the playlist for a while. This'll be in rotation for a while, I think. If I see this shit on vinyl, damn straight I'm picking it up. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.